Hello, everyone. We made it. We're finally here. Jess Clare with the incredible Tom Fortsmayer, and we're going to be talking about relationships. But in particular, our ability to communicate. So I'm talking on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of like the collective. What I can see is I'm saying that we have an inability to communicate, and we want to look at how that's destroying our relationships. I really want to talk about that. Before I do, introduce you to Tom. I think everyone knows. I think we don't need to do that anymore. How about we just talk now? If you are coming on, please say hello. Please do say hello. Please let us know that you're here. We don't necessarily see that you are, so you can kind of be a voyeur, and we don't know if you're listening or not, but we'd love to engage. So if you are there, please do come on and say hello. These conversations are not like Tom and I are telling you the way that it is. This is an opportunity to explore something. So if you're called or you're sitting there, hello, Helen. If you're called or you're sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe they're saying that. They're missing the whole point. Please say that. We want to expand our thinking. I don't want a world anymore where we can't really talk about the things that are bothering us. And that's actually what this is about. Wouldn't you say, Tom?
Definitely. We want to be able to speak freely and openly and to bring our confusion here and to allow it to be evolved. This is not about a dictation from a place of certainty. We want to explore. Hi, Christy. Hi, Helen. And it's my UK crew jumping on early. That's nice. And we're here to explore topics, and so we really want to hear from you guys about your feelings about what makes communication so difficult sometimes, and what we can do about it, and what we have to remember.
Yeah, great. So let's dive right in. Like I said, again, if you are on, please do say hello. You can just loiter in the background of this conversation because we can't see you. The internet connection is not good enough for me to check out everyone on different things. I'm still waiting for my NBN. Which I don't know if that means anything to you, but it's just our broadband network. Bring it. I am being so honest at the moment. Great, Cassandra. That's so good to hear. All right, we're going to get into this. Why would I assert something like that? Why would I assert that our inability to communicate is destroying our relationships? Well, it's from where I stand. That's what I see. What do you think? Do you think that what's destroying our relationships is an inability to communicate or something else? What about you, Tom?
Well, I think there's lots of things at play, but if we are not able to communicate, then we haven't got a chance. You know, we may have a chance of maintaining a relationship, but I don't think we have a chance of feeling fully fulfilled and satisfied whilst in relationship. I want to be clear that I don't think that a relationship can make us feel fulfilled and satisfied. That's an inside job. No partner will do that. But we need to be able to feel self-expressed with the people that we're friends with and that we're in relationships with. I think that's a really vital part of happiness in our kind of happiness toolkit, knowing that we are expressed and knowing that we are understood and knowing that we are, at least to some degree, well known, that people have our pattern and that they can make useful predictions about our patterns of behavior. But the biggest challenge is humans love patterns so much that that's part of the problem. Sally Love posted, who's one of the regular viewers here, an amazing spiritual teacher, and she posted something today about the wisdom of the healing of the snake, and about actually seeing things afresh. Like, can we be deeply connected with our partner or our friends and imagine in each interaction that we don't really know them? Like, can we bring that level of respect, so really open to them expressing themselves in new ways? Because unfortunately, So many people are so addicted to patterns and have so much safety and security around seeing people as a thing, having a category for them, and then building their own value based on how they interact with that fixed pattern, that when someone's, that actually holds us in place and makes us to start to feel, can make us feel constricted and like we need to break free and break out, and it builds in resentment and frustration. And it's like, how can we see people deeply, know them powerfully, and be completely open to them being completely different in every moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so we were talking about this. I might just share what happened as we came on the call, right? So as I came on the call with Tom, we're turning these amazing conversations into a podcast. And there was something that I didn't like. And I noticed I was starting to build resentment. Like, why isn't Tom doing that? Now, I could have let that in. I could have, couldn't I? There's many times, and I noticed a long time ago that I would have let something as simple as that impact our whole relationship. Instead, as soon as I got on the call with you, I have to communicate something, because I've noticed I'm building resentment, right? And then we had a conversation about it and we worked it out. And the ownership, I mean, I don't know what that was like for you, or you didn't really know that I was going to share that, but what is it like for you, Tom, that I got on and did that? Was that uncomfortable? Like, what was that like?
I think when someone says they need to have a word, I've learned to take a breath, to know that it's possible to respond defensively to any criticism. And so I take a breath, I open my heart, and so the first flush is one of fear that something's gone bad that's outside of my control. I've done something bad that I wasn't even aware of, and all that stuff can happen in a microsecond. And I just breathe. But ultimately, I feel safe in those conversations, because I know if we're doing something, you want to do something, and if something's brewing that is problematic, I'm going to hear from you. It also means if I'm starting to get frustrated with something, then I feel comfortable bringing it up to you. This is what I call a non-polite relationship. It's like, we don't need to worry about politeness. We don't need to worry about, I'm responsible for my feelings. And it involves a trust and a faith that I don't want there to be any bad blood between us. I really don't. And therefore, so for me, I feel refreshed by the fact you started to feel a niggle and you shared it and we worked something out. It's like, oh, I can trust you. I can trust you because of that. And that feels good to me.
That is actually a really good point. And I think this is potentially one of the things that seems counterintuitive, but airing, and maybe it's two things. So firstly, it's being able to bring something up, and not what I call responsibly, where you're owning the full thing. Like, I didn't come out and say, geez, blah, blah, blah. I actually owned, I'm feeling resentment, so I need to have a conversation. It's got nothing to do with you. And then I told you about how I've kind of set myself up to do this. Like, I'm someone that I want things so much and I know how to get them. So I'd set this whole thing up. So it was the ownership of my own behavior. So potentially it's how to have the conversation where you're fully owning yourself. But at the same time, it's not an easy conversation. And like you just said, as counterintuitive as it is, having a non-polite relationship where you do call things out that are not working for you actually builds trust. So if that's the case, and if, we're currently in a world which I can see lacks trust, what's going on that we have so many reactions instead of, hey, I want to own something? Is it that we lack tools? Like, what do you guys think? Oh, hello, Jess Palmer. How is it, like you said, you were, like you said, you actually had noticed a concern when I said, hey, I just need to talk a bit to you about something. So you noticed that stuff sort of come up of, whoo, I'm in trouble. You know, it's sort of immediately.
I think the biggest challenge is the lack of ultimate self-love. Like if we have total self-love,
say a bit more.
Yeah, so if we have total self-love, then this doesn't speak to our core value. If someone's upset with us, or we've been unconscious, or we've made a mistake, or someone's projecting and getting upset, you know, and someone says, hey, I need to share, I'm having a frustration or an upset about something that's occurring between us. One, how you brought this up to me is really beautiful because you didn't make me wrong. You took responsibility for how you were feeling. So then I'm not on the back foot. You're not saying I've made a mistake and I hadn't, and therefore it's like much more curious. We're both curious. Hey, this thing's coming up. I'm feeling some resentment, and then both of us kind of go, oh, cool. Well, let's place that on the kind of table to put it under the microscope and see what's going on here, right? But primarily, it's really hard to do that if deep down we feel that we're unlovable, or deep down we feel that we've always get it wrong, or deep down we worry we're going to be abandoned, or that we have imposter syndrome. Then someone says, hey, I'm getting a niggle, and it just brings up all of our trauma, all of our abandonment, all of our terror about our unlovability, and it's too unbearable. So then you become someone who is making me think I'm not okay. You're adding to my feelings of not okayness, and my not okayness means I'm not ultimately going to survive. So now you are a survival threat to me, and I will have to fight you to survive. And of course, it's not always like I'm not going to necessarily punch you, but I am going to resent you and dismiss your point of view. I'll negate your validity, and you know, before we know it, we're in an I'm right, you're wrong fight, or worse.
Yeah. And then again, as we put in this title, it just in that context, the relationship gets destroyed. It's gone. It's over.
Yeah.
You know, in that kind of context, unless someone then comes back and goes, hey, can we talk? And there's two parties that sort of what I call sort of drop into that surrender space and start to work it out, which mostly doesn't happen as far as I can see. In that right-wrong debate, people sometimes go to their deathbed, and that's it. Relationship's gone. People move on and then repeat it again.
Yeah, I like what Osho said about relationship. Like if you're not relating, you're not in relationship, right? The relationship is two people who are relating, and if you're fighting, and you know, then it's not really there. And so there's some great comments coming through here. So let me just take a moment here. Cassandra saying, you know, peacefully walk away when someone doesn't respond with peace. A true leader is okay to be by themselves. Rachel is saying to begin to see vulnerability as a strength, to own what we feel and see others as not the reasons for how we feel, but it's what we're thinking about a personal situation or an event that's creating the emotions. And that's, you know, this is the core tenets of nonviolent communication, which come up in our conversations so often, you know, where we take responsibility, we share the facts and then our interpretation and the feelings that we're then generating inside ourselves.
Totally. And hello, Gary. I didn't say hello to Gary or Rachel. Hello, Rachel. This is a really good conversation. I actually had this happen. I notice when I used to think that sometimes, what I'm trying to say, I've had to practice this because in the beginning I was so blunt, like so blunt. It was like, okay, I really want to be honest. So I would call someone and go, be just no softness at all, and just be like, I'm going to tell you something. I'm this, that, and it was like I called it a blunt object. And that didn't work. However, despite that it didn't work, people still would say to me, I know that you're never going to lie and hide. So over time, I developed a capacity to say it in a way that still honored the person in front of me. I didn't always do that. I needed to practice. And then yesterday, I actually had someone come to me She might even be watching. But I had someone come to me. She sent me a text and said, have I done something to you? Because you're not talking to me. I feel like there is something that's happened. And there was something that had happened, and I just got busy. Well, that's not true. I used the excuse that I got busy because basically my brain didn't want to have to deal with conversation. I say busy, but actually it was like, oh, I'm going to have a non-polite conversation. I'll get to that later. Right, that's what happened. But she came, so she came to me and went, I feel like you're someone I can ask and you'll tell me the truth. And I did. Immediately I sent back, yeah, something did happen. And let's chat like in a couple of hours. And then we chatted. And I'm also very much, committed to being honest. And she was like, well, where do we go from here? She acknowledged this thing that happened. And in my head, I was thinking, I only have a few friends. I don't need, I've got 4 friends. And so I noticed myself wanting to be honest, to go, I don't want any more friends. That's enough. I've got 4, right? But then at the same time as saying that, noticing to myself, I'm like, that's really arrogant and dismissive, and that's going to dishonor her. So I don't want to say that. But she said to me, do you ever, the words were, and this is to the point that you started with, do you ever give people second chances? And that was really interesting. I noticed how much I was like so black and white that, to your point, I didn't see her newly. I was like, that's who she is. And when she said that, I went, and she was really polite and really lovely, like so lovely. And I noticed, I'm like, you know what? I'm being so black and white. I'm not relating to you. I've just decided you did that one thing and I'm busy. So I'm just going to and we had a conversation about it. And I just noticed that. And then as we got into it, I saw a different person. She was loving. She was kind. She was attentive. She was actually open to new things. And I had decided, because of this one thing that happened, that she wasn't like that at all. But the moment that she called me on it, I became open to something new, and I saw her in a very different way. And it made me think, how many people am I doing that now? How many people are just written off because they did one thing?
Isn't that interesting?
And I wrote a post that said, it is. And I wrote a post that said, do you get frustrated by people who aren't perfect? I haven't had a chance to go back and look at it, but it was like I started to go, how much am I just not letting people be imperfect? And then deciding and writing them off and destroying relationships based on one incident.
Rachel here is asking, do you give yourself second chances, which is an interesting reflection. But I think, something in the immediacy of the dopamine response and the social media training around, the immediacy of connection and the immediacy of satisfaction and the impatience that breeds. I wonder how, if a friend isn't, if we don't feel like clicking like to every interaction we're getting with somebody, are we then just going to, scroll on in our reality to look for something which is a love heart, and maybe there's some beauty in, a Marie Kondo relationship to reality, where we only connect with people and objects that we absolutely immediately adore. And maybe we're actually missing out on a whole bunch of potential connections because we're getting unrealistic. We've been trained to be unrealistic in our dopamine response if something doesn't feel immediately amazing, then we're not interested, because they're training our interest to be related to things that feel immediately amazing. I wonder if that's affecting our ability to court friendship and to grow over time. That's an impact of social media and the way we've been trained to define value that could actually be affecting us in everyday interactions, or the lack thereof. That's quite a scary thought. I've not considered that.
It's very interesting that Rachel asked that question. Curious to know, do you give yourself second chances, right? I think I work really hard to never make a mistake. Definitely. I can, just in her saying that, and also our conversation today, and then I notice how I operate in my business and the standard that I have for myself, and how much there is a whole lot of being driven not to make a mistake, to get it right, I wouldn't say be perfect, because I'm very aware I'm not, and I do make mistakes. But yeah, I definitely don't go lightly on myself when I do. And then my external environment validates that. So, there's people that I would just like really love to mend relationships with, that almost just are a big no. So I noticed that if those two things keep it in place, it's like I need to be ahead. I'm just noticing it now, right? It's like I will do whatever it takes, even if it's at the expense of my own sleep and my own energy, or my body, because I feel like I have untapped energy. But it's the rest that I need. And also, I've got this validation that there's people in my life that will not forgive me for things I've done. So, and that's hard.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't.
Yeah. I have seen to be true that if we haven't forgiven ourselves, then other people often won't either.
What does forgiving oneself look like? Because I think I have. Maybe I have intellectually, because there's an intellectual forgiveness, which is where it's just like, yeah, I forgive myself. Yeah, I forgive myself. But yeah, I don't see the external kind of manifestation of that. If that makes sense. Well, it's like, yeah, if I really had, would explain.
Well, so let's be clear. If you really had forgiven yourself, that doesn't mean that other people would definitely forgive you. It definitely helps. But would it still, how heavy would your heart feel? How heavy does your heart feel about the fact that they have that perception? It's like, how would you feel if they walked into a room? Could you keep your head held high? These are the signs by which we are at peace with who we've been and how we've been and why we have been how we have been, and so that anyone from our past could walk into a room into which we're standing and our heart wouldn't beat faster. We wouldn't go into panic, even knowing that that's a stretch, because even if we're totally at peace with ourselves, if we know someone hates us and they walk into a room, right, we might get more nervous. But generally, in terms of, do we question our validity? Yeah. Do we question our value? How does anyone listening here, what would be the evidence that we've forgiven ourselves? I'd love to get your guys' take on it. Oh, Cassandra said something. I've not read it, but let's read it out loud.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself is knowing that you have made mistakes. However, you have taken this heaviness and worked on it that hard that you have used this and made yourself better, and that you are doing better. And I think there's great beauty there. I take comfort. Some people might say, you've been working on yourself for 20 years, Tom, but you're still batshit bonkers. You've been married, you've divorced twice. Once is allowed, but 2 times says something about you, and I'm like, you didn't know me when I was 18, I was a complete wreck then. I've still been learning lessons and making mistakes, but I'm way more integrated than I used to be. So these tools may be worn down and worn out, but they work. I'm still a massive work in progress. I might be what you get to call wise when I'm 80, maybe. But for me, it's like I am mad on the insides here. But my question is, am I getting less mad? Am I being more peaceful? Am I loving myself more? Am I more able to put my arms around all people? Definitely. And so for me, I've made some terrible mistakes, and some things I'm still working through. Yes, I'm gleaning the lessons. I'm moving from toxic shame to the kind of guidance shame that teaches us, how to be a better version of ourselves, how to look after people better, how to be more honest and open. And at the same time, I'm resting in a 14 billion year trajectory that says, you know what? We've all been exposed to insanity. We've been conditioned in madness. We've been separated from our sense of connection to the all and wonder. Of course, we're bonkers. Of course, we're struggling. Of course, we're suffering. I just think life is too short for anyone to be to blame. I think that's the foundation of good communication. It's like, really, who the hell has got any position that they can take where they can take any judgment on anybody else? I think we should wake up, call ourselves mad as frogs, know that we're as bad as the worst of every part of every aspect of human nature, and then just commit to do our very best to breathe a little bit more light and to put our arms around everyone, whether we think they're behind us or ahead of us, because we're all in it together and we're all fucked. And the more we're honest and open about that, then maybe, just maybe, we can get curious about how our madness is bashing up against other people's madness. And we can use that with curiosity and love without any attachment and not taking it personally, to learn how to be more free.
Yeah. And that, do you know, maybe that's part of it, is that maybe it's people's reactions. Hello, Sally Love. And Christy Louise. I don't know. I can't see the Facebook users on there too. But maybe part of it is reacting. Because I was just thinking about that, right? We're all batshit crazy. We're all kind of a little bit, crazy in our own way. But there's a part of me that when I react, it's almost like, well, you're no different. Like it's like if someone's like, well, you did this, it's like, well, you did that. Like there's this need to go, we're all like this. We all do stupid shit. It's not, we all get freaking annoyed at things. We all get this. So it's like the pointing out of it is it kind of generates this response like, yeah, well, you do it too. Right. And I notice it's like people go back and forth, but actually that's not what creates relating. Reaction and the response and the telling everyone that they're the jerks and we're all jerks. What I've noticed, what creates relating, is the ownership of it and being honest about that. It's not, yeah, but you're doing it too, and you're doing it too, and you're doing it too. It's actually, yeah, you're right, I am being a dick.
Yeah, it's like, but if we start with that, if we start with, if we debase ourselves, if we walk with humility, the great Eminem film 8 Mile, the final scene is, it's a rap battle, and his competitor has got all this shit on him, and he just raps and deprecates himself. He's just like, I'm fucked. I live in a trailer with my mum. Your mate fucked my girl. It's like, this is who I am. What am I going to do? Right? It's like, if we start the day with that humility, right? No one's got anything on us. And no one knows the stuff. If we've done enough work on our stuff and we understand that the root of all of our dysfunction is pain, right? And is fear. And if we truly understand that, why the hell are we picking on people that are dicks? Because if they're having a bad day, if they're being dysfunctional, destructive, or abusive, they've been abused. They have been hurt. The world has broken their hearts. And therefore they require more love, more compassion. It's like there's no position in which we start with any position of superiority, because those that are the most broken are those that are most deserving of love. That's just the spiritual logic of it. And when we see that our madness is born out of fear, then we see all damaging people as deserving of more love. It's just a logical conclusion of the work.
Yeah, absolutely. Sally says I bloody love that film. What film? I was like, can I miss something? Was I not paying attention?
Yeah, it's the Eminem
yes,
autobiography kind of flick, and
yes.
it's packed full of spiritual genius, you know, and you know, taking your moment and going for it and being yourself. And his moment where he smashes it is where he's just totally vulnerable. I mean, you know, Renee Brown, you know, is given all this fucking credit for being the vulnerability queen. Eminem was smashing that for years, you know, and does it in, you know, her TED talk may be watched by millions, but 8 Mile was watched by tens of millions, you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying. It's that moment of vulnerability where people do, like that moment between anger and surrender, when someone's being angry and then they just finally surrender to, you're right, I'm being a jerk. You know, things are hard, and then something really comes out that's underneath that pain, that reaction. Yeah, those moments are the most. Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say those moments in my experience are the most beautiful, connecting, and the kind of birthplace of the growth in the relationship. And I know for myself, I get so disappointed when others won't play that game with me.
That's my favorite
game, but it's like,
no, it is a game. It's a search for truth. When you're in relationship with someone who is more committed to truth than their identity as someone that knows the truth, you're onto a winner. You know, when you're in relationship with someone who's more committed to truth than their identity as someone that knows the truth, then you have a chance. Because my favorite moment is in a fight, and you know, where I will something will be pointed out to me, and I get that I've just got it wrong. You know, or I reflect that to my partner, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I totally see that." And like she wants to know the truth more than she wants me to consider her someone who's got the value on truth. You know, it's like that commitment to the deeper understanding. It begins with an absolute certainty that we're deluded. It begins with an absolute certainty that our first position is one of limited identity, carved by pain and shaped by attachment. Like that, of course, we're going to be coming to something with rigidity and inaccuracy and delusion and prejudice. That has to be our beginning point of understanding in our search for truth. That we have to apply critical thinking to our paradigm. We have to know our paradigm is flawed in principle. Then we can have a conversation like we are here today, where we're like, how am I getting this wrong? Help me see. And let me see, you know, in a past relationship, we had this rule that if we were upset with our partner, we'd have to give the headline of the upset whilst doing an ugly dance.
Someone said that up there. We need to learn to laugh at our.
Yeah, right. And so we had this thing. It's like, you know what? If you're pissed off because I've done this thing, I want you to say, I want to have a word, but I want you to come into the room. And I don't just mean some kind of mild ugly dance. I mean like properly ugly, you know? And it's just then, because we just know people often have an egoic response to being criticized. So if someone's criticizing you whilst they are being egoless in their criticism of you, right? And it starts it from a position, you know? So I just think, you know, love those moments also when if someone's really gunning for a fight, you know, whether it's a physical fight or whether it's an emotional fight, and someone just chooses to meet it with love and warmth, you know, and it just watching sometimes just be the most disarming moment, you know, where it's just like someone is not seeing what's being said. You know, it's the Aikido of negotiation. It's the Aikido of evolution, you know, where someone comes at you with this energy and you just turn it and dance with it. And then Next thing, they're standing facing the other way, next door to you, shoulder to shoulder, feeling completely different about the thing. And all you've just done is take their energy, do a little dance with it, and lovingly put them in a different paradigm or position. And it's like that's the stuff we should be being taught, you know?
Totally. It is that shifting of energy. And Sally said, laughing takes me straight out of a mood. I was just thinking as you're saying that, you know, one of the things I train my people that work with me is, you know, we do a lot on social media. We're social media school, but it's sometimes we'll send things to people and they don't like it. And I'll get some really reactive response back, like berating me for what I've written in there, right? And it's interesting. I never have thought to react to that, particularly around COVID. Like, I just really got people are going through so much. I don't know who these people are, but how I train people, the people I work with, to deal with it is to bring humor. So if it's marketing, it's like, I'm so sick of being inboxed. I hate your marketing. It's this, that, and which I really get, because there's so much marketing out there, right? So I so understand, even though that's not what I'm doing. So we send back, how I train my staff, what we send back is, would you prefer an interpretive dance? Right?
What dance?
Because in those moments, would you prefer interpretive dance? Right? Now, to this day, every time that we've responded like that, I've had, this is what's really funny, is they've laughed, then gone, what is it you do? And it's turned into a sales call anyway. That's what's funny about it. It's like, it's like being able to hold a space for someone to just be fully 100% wherever they are in that moment. You know, and I mean, I'm talking about business, but even relationships, if you're able to hold that, allow that, and then somehow bring play to it, like Sally said, you know, laughing takes me out of the mood. You got to be careful with it, because sometimes it can like make it worse. I've practiced and I've noticed that I could at times be just as annoying as I am playful in those moments. But over time, you pick up on the energy, and if you can bring play creatively in those moments, yeah, it just shifts it. Shifting the energy, holding the space and shifting the energy.
You know, that's, you know, you reminded me there of something I was speaking about the other day to someone, which is the court jester was the kings or the queens, but this is usually more in the kind of king's court. The court jester is the king, one of the king's greatest advisors. Now, the king's the king, right? So he's in the world of paramount ego. He can't be questioned. He can't be seen to be vulnerable, right? It's like you even see this with presidents when they get a cough or they're like, there's nothing wrong with the president. He can't get ill. He can't be vulnerable, right? The king can't be wrong. The king can't be weak, right? But every good court, people think, and historically and in the media, they portray the jester as just this fool. But the jester is not the fool. He's the satirist. And the satirist is someone who has enough intelligence to be able to bring comedy to the failings of current thinking, right? And tease it in such a way where it's understood and loved. It can demonstrate, I understand your perspective and why you're making the choices better than you can. And let me, with humor, demonstrate why it's madness. And I can tease you into a new shift with a laughing at yourself. You could learn something about that there's another perspective and another set of values you could be operating with. And the jester is the genius at that. They bring the king to realize that his egotism, and he needs to be done with that way, because otherwise if someone just comes straight out and criticizes the king, it doesn't work. So the jester has the skill set, but the jester the king will take it from the jester because the jester is already debased. They're in a fucking harlequin outfit. They look ridiculous. They mock themselves 8 times out of 10, and then 2 times out of 10 they make everyone laugh at the king, because that new law that he's just placed is nonsense, and he needs to realize it's nonsense. And that's exactly how we can be in our relationships. It's like sometimes if we can just take on the archetype of the genius jester, and we can debase ourselves first and regularly, which is what you do, Jess, then we're actually in a position to demonstrate we've been egoless enough to point out where others are also in need of looking at their stuff. And it's done in such a way where there's grace and joy.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I'm a genius.
I think that is what I'm saying. Absolutely. You know, you've prostrate yourself on the altar of crazy enough for us to feel okay with you pointing fingers at us. So someone's just said a great example. So Sally Love saying this is the sacred clown. I don't know how to pronounce the Heyoka bit. But someone here as well is Jonathan Pye. I don't know if you've seen some of the Jonathan Pye stuff, who's a UK satirist. He does this fake newsreader piece where he loses his temper and does a piece to camera, off camera, but it's not. Oh man, he's properly genius. And it's such a beautiful way of complaining about the status quo, but bringing love and light to it. The sacred clown.
And look, I do have a value. The sacred clown, I'm going to have to check that out. One of my values is that I get so real and vulnerable with myself around my own humanity that I give people complete freedom to be them, to do the same around me. So it's like how I'm always like testing how vulnerable, open, and how much can I sort of tell one on myself is a way of putting it. Bring out my own BS, I call it, that it gives people the space to actually just laugh at their own humanity, find people ridiculously funny, as well as myself. So that's the value. Now, that's all I have to say about that. So
you need to go to clown school. You know, I don't know if you've been to any modern clown school or clown events, right? But I've seen some one-man shows that they're mind-blowing at how they challenge you to think about who you are and how you feel. They're like personal development exercises going on these events. I've only been to a few, but this person is just, sometimes I've been to one, it was completely unspoken. He didn't say a word, but how he interacted with the audience. And it was actually terrifying because if he comes towards you, you're like, what the fuck am I going to do? And how am I going to cope? And he totally brings you out of your politeness. You know, if you think you're confident, go be the audience in a modern clown show, right? It's genius how it can kind of pull you into the spontaneous moment and realize how much politeness and wanting to be seen to understand holds us down. I think there's so much that we can do, but I think, you know, we started this with how can we see, like Sally's post that inspired us. Sally, you probably didn't see that at the start, kind of inspired this conversation to some degree about how can we see people afresh, you know, how can we not let our history of our relationship define how we're going to treat them in the next moment. But I actually think as well, it's how do we, and you spoke to this too, but how do we turn up afresh? Because I know when I'm really in my spontaneous moment, I surprise people. You know, there are these bolts of excitement where it's like, oh, some other flavor's coming through and I'm playing in a different form. And in that, people's position to themselves has to change because the dance is changing. And with a little bit of spontaneous role play or comedy skit or outburst of spiritual ranting or whatever comes through, then something shifts in it. It's like that's what I like about these conversations is we move around the conversation and then we get insights and share them and they come through and passions rise and swell and moments of clarity evolve. And it's like my only commitment to this conversation is that I don't come from a place of totally knowing everything, you know, might have some reflections that have value, but I want here to think differently. And I've had that in this call. Just thinking about you know the dopamine like hit and how that makes us actually way more judgmental of people and needing an immediate connection with people, or we'll dismiss them as unvaluable. That to me is I'm going to need to spend a week with that, and that just came out today. You know, it's like I want my friendships and my relationships to have that openness to that spontaneous expression.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Oh, Tom, it's 10:15. I know that you're going to have to go because it's 1:15 over there where you are. I was a bit delayed today because of my computer. Started going through an update as soon as we're supposed to go live. Thank you. I mean, if anyone else has any final comments about this, I suppose I feel really called to just say this, and that is, maybe just sit with the question, because I'm going to sit with the question. How can I see myself and others in a new way? What do I need to communicate so that I can see myself and others in a new way in this moment, whoever's in front of me? And maybe see what happens when we do that. Because I really think, like, people, I just saw how many people like, I want that, I want that, I want that, right? Anytime I see a group of people wanting the same thing, it makes me think that maybe it's something every human being wants. And so what's not required is that we look for it, but what's required is that we be it. It's more that. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Sally Loves just said,
anything else you want to say before we go?
Yeah, I just want to reflect. Sally Loves said something which I also do with my clients as well, and myself also, which is she gets up and she pretends that she's just been born and she has no past reference point, and I think that's a really key foundation to presence. So just being truly fresh each moment. Nice.
Beautiful. Thank you so much once again, guys, for tuning into this. Janetta, Rachel, Sandra, Sally. Who else have we got?
Jess,
I
Helen,
think the Facebook user was Janetta.
Christy.
Jess, Helen. Anyone else that we may have missed?
Cassandra.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Yeah, I love these conversations. We may be moving them to fortnightly. I don't know if I can let go of that though. So either we'll see you next week or we'll see you in a fortnight. Okay.
Love you all. Thank you.
So much love to you all. Bye.